my daughter Paisley, one of her favorite movies is called Frozen. And we watched that a lot when it came out. A lot of soundtrack, we'd listen to that a lot. And basically there is sisters. One is named Anna, the other is named Elsa. Okay, they have a fight, so Elsa freezes the town. Right, and then Anna is trying to get Elsa to unfreeze the town, and she falls in love with a guy named Kristoff. There's a lot of drama that happens as this goes on, but at the end, everything works out okay. And in a lot of Disney movies, they say this, and I want you to say it with me: they lived happily ever after. Yeah. So as kids, like, we grow up and we see that. Ladies, I know you grow up and you think about the wedding and you think about that day, and it's going to be very special. You want it to be just right. Guys, you want to find that girl and you want to marry her, and you want for parents to pay for it so you don't have to, and then you want to live happily ever after. And one of the most cherished albums in a house would be the wedding album, right? Or the wedding pictures. We like to look at those. Like, I like to look at my parents. You probably like to look at yours. Or you might look at your own and think, hey, look at that guy. Like, there's no hair right here, but there is there. It's thick and luscious, and look at it. And, like, she's beautiful and she's still beautiful. So just for fun, I wanted to bring since we're talking about marriage, some of the pictures that we have of marriage pictures of people in our congregation. You yell out and you just guess who these people are, okay? Can anybody guess who this is? Okay. This side, well, Lisa and James, right? Livers. This is, yep, Parrish and Deucer. All right, let's go to the next one. How about this? Yeah, it's the Horns right over here, right? And what about this? Ethan and Kayla. I almost said, okay. Let's go to the next one. What about this? Anybody recognize them? This is the Knights. And what about over here? It's the Otts. Yeah, look at his hair. Look at it. So, nice. All right, go to the next one. All right. There's a handsome devil right there and a beautiful lady. So, on both sides. So, does anybody know who this is over here? That's right. Yeah. Who got that one? You get a free coffee from the coffee shop, okay? All right, let's go to the next one. What about this? Might be harder. Chris and Kelly, right? What about over here? Stephanie and John, they have the walks. Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. What about this one? Joyce, what about over here? Who's this? It's the Stewarts. Look at Webby's thick sideburns and long flowing hair. Look at that. So I don't know who is prettier, the hair, like Joyce or Webby. I'll say it's Joyce. So let's go to the next one. All right, and this is Michael. This is Michael and Holly Lindemann here, so in their wedding picture. So here's the thing. We love looking at wedding pictures. It reminds us of a time of deep love. But I would say that there are people that look at their wedding pictures all across the world, and they look at it and they think, like, how did it get from here to where we're at now? How did this love that we had here now, it's become more like a business relationship? How did this fairy tale that we once wanted become kind of like a nightmare? How did that happen? Well, there's things in marriage, that I want to call traps. Things that can come into our marriage and intoxicates our marriage and makes it worse. And we're going to talk about those traps today. The first one is this: thinking that you have to be a product of your environment. If you ask a child that's young what they want to be when they grow up, if I ask my children, Chesney's going to say she wants to be a vet. Trey says he wants to be in the NBA. And then he has my height too. And then also Paisley wants to be a princess. All right, and here is a survey of a lot of things young kids say they want to be as they grow up. There's a lot of promise, they say those, and then they never say this. They never say, I want to live in my parents' basement till I'm 30. You never hear that, okay? But this is what they say. Now, if you ask somebody that is 20 to 23 what they want to be, it changes. There's not as much promise. And why is that? What happens? Well, they've gotten a dose of reality. Right? And someone has put a lid on their potential. So a lot of times when we get married, we think about marriage and we have this picture of what we want it to look like, right? And then it becomes something else, and what happens? Well, we get a dose of reality. We don't think about things as we're growing up. Like, no one wakes up and says, I want to have a bad marriage. But we fail to realize sometimes that things that happened in our home life, when we lived at our parents, if you lived in a dysfunctional family, that can carry over to the marriage that you have today. If you were abused, that can carry over to the marriage that you have today. If something happened at school and kids didn't treat you very good, that can carry over into the marriage that you have today. And we become a product of our environment. So we're going to talk about Joseph. Joseph understands dysfunctional family. Joseph understands pain. He knows what it was like. And so just a little bit of history. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob, and Jacob was the grandson of Abraham. Jacob's family was dysfunctional. Jacob had children with 4 different women. At the time of the text in Genesis 37, he was married to 2 women at the same time. Jacob grew up in dysfunction. The story of Joseph starts with a dream, and God shows him through the dream that Joseph is going to do something great, and it makes his brothers jealous. His brothers probably think he's spoiled and arrogant. So in Genesis 37:12 is where we start. It says, Now his brothers went to the pasture, their father's flock near Shechem, and said to Joseph, Are not your brothers pasturing the flock in Shechem? Come, I will lead them. And he said to him, Here I am. So he said to him, Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word. So he sent him to the valley of Hedron, and he came to Shechem. So if you look here, you notice something. Joseph is not with his brothers like in the flock. Like, he's not doing that work. He's got other responsibilities, but Joseph was also the favorite of Jacob. So there's some dysfunction happening already. Typically, hurt is passed down from generation to generation. Sometimes abused kids will become abused parents. And here we see favoritism happening. Division and hatred enter the family once again as history repeats itself. And I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that or have had toxic relatives. I looked up, you can show that next picture. Here are some of the ones that I think of when I think of toxic people. That's Loki. He tried to kill the entire world. And then there is Cousin Eddie. There is Bobby Boucher's mom. I think they just called her Mama, right? Like, I don't know what her name was. The wicked stepmother and sisters. I mean, those can bring up memories of some dysfunctional families. A lot of us have experienced that. Maybe your dad was an alcoholic. Maybe, he came home and you just despised him for it. But now you're older and you work and you're stressed and you come home and you find that you are drinking every night to deal with that. Maybe your mom loved you conditionally. And maybe now when your kid brings home a paper and it doesn't have a grade on it that you like, you ignore them for the rest of the night. And the dysfunction continues. But here's the thing, and here's the story we're going to go to about Joseph. There's good news, because you can break the cycle. The dysfunction of your family need not define your history. Your heritage does not have to be decided by your dysfunctional family or things and hurts of the past. You can break that cycle. Genesis 37:18 says, Now he's coming to see his brothers. They're tending the flock. He wants to find them. But they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Genesis 37:19 says, Here comes the dreamer. This is his brothers talking. They said to each other, Come now, let us kill him and throw him into this cistern. It's like a pit that collected water, and say that an animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. One, how did they know, that it was him from a distance? Well, one, like Joseph had a coat of many colors, right? So they would have noticed that. And what would that have done? That would have probably sparked hatred towards him because he was the dad's favorite. That reminds them of that. They see him coming from a distance, and the dysfunction continues. They want to kill him. I remember when I was about 10 years old, I came home one day, and I was at school. I went to our house. There were things kind of shuffled around. My mom comes in and she says, Chris, she said, we're leaving. She said, I've had enough of your dad. And I remember crying and thinking, like, I don't want this to happen. Like, this is my house. I've grown up in this house for 10 years. And as much as I try to talk to my mom, like, she just had enough. And my dad comes home and he gets angry. And I remember that she left that day. And I remember at 10 years old, I was at a babysitter's house and I was laying down taking a nap. And remember thinking that I wish that I could wake up and this would just be a nightmare that I've had. I had seen my parents fight. Like, I had seen them argue. I had got between my dad and my mom. I thought he was physically going to hurt her. And he picked me up and he threw me and I landed on the kitchen table. I remember them fighting. I remember the cussing. Like, I remember all that stuff. And then I remember the divorce. And I wish they could have just got it together. You know, because as I get older, as I go into marriage, like, I can't get that out of my head. I can't think, like, I don't want to be that. I don't want my kids to remember that. I don't want them to experience that. I want it to be something greater. I don't want it to be like them. And I got married. Of course, you seen the lovely lady up there in the picture. But here's the thing, like, research strongly suggests that, like, people that come from a divorced family get a divorce. And it also says that children that are abused become abusive parents. But here's the thing. That's just half of the research. There's other research that says that you and I can be a transitional character. We can break the chain. A person who is in a single generation changes the entire course of their lineage. They refuse to pass on to their children, and they break the mold. They don't let abused children become abusive parents, and they don't let alcoholics become alcoholic adults. They don't pass on the sins of their fathers to their children, but they become a transitional character. And with Jesus, we can do that. So, thinking about this going into marriage, like, marriage is not easy, you know. Like, it's great and I love it, but it's something that you have to work for. It's something that you have to fight for, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But, like, as I'm going into marriage, I had this in my head, like, my parents got divorced when they were married 10 years. And I also had in my head, I was 10 when they got divorced. And so we got married, and like, we had hit 10 years. And to me, that was amazing. We're married 15 now. Trace, my son, is 11. Like, we made it. We beat that. We can be transitional. We don't have to be what we were raised in. And you are the same. God can change it. We don't want to be, you don't have to be a product of your environment. It doesn't have to define who you are. Second trap is being passive. We look in the scripture, we see Reuben was the oldest brother, okay? And it says in Genesis 37:21, it says, when Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. Let us not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into a cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. So this is the older brother, and he's taking up for the younger brother. He feels like it's his responsibility. He doesn't want him killed. He actually speaks up. He says something, even though he's outnumbered. When I was probably, before my parents got divorced, so I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. Like, my grandpa had these rental properties, okay? And he had like 17 of them. And one day, like, I walked into one of the rental properties, and it was just me and nobody else. And there was nothing in it. Like, it had curtains and stuff like that, but there was a book of matches one of his employees had left there. So I walked up and I grabbed that book of matches and I would light it, and then I would light the curtain. The curtain would burn, and then I'd blow it out. You know, and I did that many times, and then all of a sudden something happened. The curtain, like, really caught fire. I mean, it was like burning, And then, like, I couldn't blow it out, and then the wall started catching fire. And then, like, I'll just make this short, like, I burnt it down, like, to the ground. And I had to go tell my mom about it, like, of course, before it was totally lost. And, like, so I told her, hey, like, caught Grandpa's house on fire. She had to call whatever. And, like, so, you know, afterwards, like, she had a serious talk with me, okay? Like, a talk that it involved the belt, like, her crying and yelling. But here's the thing, like, she gets real serious with me, and she says, you cannot do that. Like, you cannot play with matches. You could get hurt. You could die. And here's the thing, like, in our family sometimes we see something happening and we won't say a word. Destruction, dysfunction, things are happening in the lives of our children, in the lives of our family, and we don't do anything. Man, I was a student minister. I tell you that every time I'm up here. But, like, I can't tell you how many times I had a teenager come to me and tell me they were addicted to porn. I can't tell you how many times that I had teenagers that were almost needed to be in AA because they were out drinking. They had a curfew, but their parents had no idea, like, what was going on in their lives. We have kids and teenagers that can go in their room with a phone and they can look at anything they want, and we let them do it. They have the internet in their room, and they can look at anything they want. They have TVs in their room, and they can have cable on it, and they can watch anything they want. And we don't say nothing because we're afraid that it will feel awkward, that we haven't said anything in a long time. But listen, like, fight for your kids. They don't know the addictions that some of this stuff causes. Fight for them. They are precious. They deserve it. We've been put in their lives to guide them and help them. We have wives, and I'm talking to myself here too, like, we have wives that long to spend time with their husbands, that long for them to be the leaders in the home, that want help from them doing the dishes or whatever, but we sit exhausted and we just watch the TV. And we have husbands that long for their wives to say something, one thing positive to them. You know, one thing that's good. Show me, like, come and pray with me. You know, just anything. We let Satan convince us that it's too far gone. We shouldn't say anything. It's too awkward. It's too much. We've not been there. We're too dirty. We cannot do that. Show that pic, if you will. This is a picture, and I love this. This is like two people, and they're in disagreements. You see them back to back, but the inner being of them are wanting to talk. And I think about that because I think about those wedding pictures and the people that we fell in love with and the people that we love. And we fight over stupid stuff sometimes. Courtney and I, we can really get into it over recyclables. You know, I don't want to. She does, and I'll say, like, hey, if you leave this out, I'm just going to throw it away in the church dumpster. And she's like, you better. And we're fighting, and then I'm like, how did it get to this? It's so stupid. I'm fighting over a milk carton. Stupid. You know, like, and that's it. Like, look at those people. Their disagreement. The two people want to talk. Like, look, can I just strip all that stupid stuff away and just focus on the girl that I fell in love with? Because she's still that person. Guys, that lady that's in your wedding picture that has that beautiful dress on, she's still that person. And ladies, that guy that you fell in love with in that wedding picture, that big hunk of a man that would die for you, he is still that person. He's that person. Strip away the stupidness. Like, let's stop focusing on some of the things that we do and start focusing on the love that we had. You know, if I could talk to my parents, if an adult me could go back in time and I could talk to them, I would say to fight for me. Like, fight for your marriage. And in the same way, God wants you to fight for your marriage, and He wants you to fight for your kids, because there's a lot on the line. Man, you would, if we said after this, we're going to have a pickup football game, we'll go outside and have one, you guys would probably do it, right? You would jump in front of somebody 10 times your size or try to tackle them in a football game. But we freeze when it comes to coming to our wives and trying to pray with them, or trying to be a spiritual leader because maybe it's too far gone and we feel awkward. Women, you will go Black Friday shopping, and you will tackle a lady 10 times bigger than you. And you will jump in front of her so you can get that toy for your kids, or you can get that KitchenAid thing, whatever it is, to cook with. You'll do that. It's not over. Fight. Whatever it takes, like fight for your marriage. Fight for each other. Think about the wedding pictures. Think about the day that you got married. Think about those things. She was worth it then, and she's still worth it now. Point 3, trap 3, don't deceive yourself. So Joseph, Genesis 37:23, we see it says, so when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe of many colors that he wore, and they took it and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat. So they threw their brother in a pit. Think about how dysfunctional it is. They threw their brother in a pit, and then they ate, like right after. They didn't care. So then they sat down to eat. Looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites. Then Judah said to his brother, what profit is it that we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him, and let us not lay a hand on him. And that's what they did. In the 31, if you go back, it says they got Joseph's robe. So they took the robe. They showed the dad. They got blood on the robe. They showed it to the dad, and the dad thought Joseph had been devoured by an animal, and he was broken. And think about how broken Joseph was. He was deeply hurt by what his brothers did. Here's the thing, like we all can face some kind of hurt because we live in a fallen world, and sometimes people hurt people, and we all can face it together. And Jesus understands our pain. Isaiah 53:3 says, he was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain, like one from whom people hid their faces. He was despised and he was held of low self-esteem. Here's the thing, like you might think Jesus just suffered on the cross, but he suffered. I mean, if you grew up in the town that he grew up in, I want you to think about what happened here. Like Mary, his mom, got pregnant out of wedlock. And she said that it was God, but how many people believed that, at the time? I mean, there's a scripture that says, and it's in John 7:5, it says, for even his own brothers did not believe in him. He understood what it was like. He understood pain. Jesus recognized the reality of hurt, and we should too, because the first step is to admit it so we can overcome it. I have a friend, I was in Florida. I was there, he called me, and we were just talking like normal, and then out of nowhere, just very casually, he said, yeah, I'm getting a divorce. And I was like, you're getting a divorce? And he goes, yeah. And we found out that his wife had been abused by somebody in her past, and it really kind of worked on their marriage. And, here's the thing, I'm really close to this person. I was like, what? I never knew anything was wrong. I mean, if you've seen him somewhere, you'd have no idea. There was no, asking for help. There wasn't any inner circle, praying for him. There wasn't nothing. I had another friend. He came home one day. He was a pastor. Came home. His wife had packed everything and left, and he couldn't do anything to get her back. Same thing. I talked to him, and there was trouble brewing in the marriage, and it was bad. But if you were to see them, you would think that they were okay, that everything was good. And here's the thing. The worst thing we can do is deceive ourselves and deceive other people and think that everything is okay when it's not. We put on a mask and we pretend. Courtney and I, when we were looking for a house here in Corden, I found one. I thought it was a really good deal. Really nice looking on the outside. And it was on 5 acres. And it was under $100,000. And I thought, well, that's awesome. So I go in it. I start looking. It looks nice. And then I go into the basement. And no joke, there's black mold going up, the walls. And I told Courtney to get out immediately. And we left that house and never looked back at it. But here's the thing. Our marriages are like that sometimes, aren't they? Our lives are like that. They look good from the outside, but on the inside, they are falling apart. They are damaged. And we just tell people we're okay. And we don't want to deal with the hurt or the pain that we have. I know in a church this size that there are marriages that are hurting. I know there are people that have been abused. I know there are things that are going on. And the last thing we need to do is pretend that we're okay. I'm not okay. You're not okay. There are difficult family situations. Someone might be addicted to something, and that plays a role in their family. They might be an alcoholic or addicted to something else. The worst thing we can do is put on a mask. Like we are a family. I'm not saying you go air your dirty laundry on Facebook. I'm not saying you get up here and tell everybody what's going on in your life. But I am saying that you find somebody and you try to get help. Fight for your marriage. Fight for your family. Genesis 50:20. I'm going to leave Joseph there. You can read the rest of it. It's a great story. But he overcomes. And in 50:20 it says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is being done, the saving of many lives." God redeems the story of Joseph, and he can redeem your story too. God's not done with Joseph. He's not done with you. And Satan might whisper in your ear that there's no hope. It's too far gone. Throw in the towel. But there's hope. Jesus says there is. Joseph overcome because he trusted in the overcomer. So today, listen, we're going to do something a little bit different. Like, they're going to sing up here. And if you could, like, I just want you to, can you just stay in your seat? And I'm going to give you some time with God. If you could just pray with God. I don't know what's going on in your life, but if you want to grab, like, your wife's hand, and you want to come at one of these steps, and you want to kneel and pray, or you want to come up here, like, if my wife was in here, I'd be the first to do that. Because we need that. You know, doesn't mean that you're falling apart. Maybe you just want to pray with her. Maybe you need help. I don't know. But I just want you to meditate and think about your relationship with God, your relationship with your family, the fight that we have. Listen, people who came to Jesus in the Bible, you take somebody that's blind, you take a lady with a disease, they would fight to get to him. The crowd would say, "You are not worthy. You are dirty. You need to stay away from him." And they fought through the crowd to get to him. And he changed their lives. And sometimes I think we're too scared. It doesn't matter what people think. It only matters what God thinks of you. So as they sing today, I just want you to take some time with God. Stay in your seats. Pray. If you want to come up here and pray, Webby will be up here. I'll be in the back. Frank will be in the back if you need somebody to pray with you. Again, if you want to pray as a family, if you want to pray, just come and pray. Maybe you don't know Jesus today. Maybe you've never been baptized. Maybe you've never accepted him. We want that today for you too. You can come forward and you can pray.